Hi, this is Mark Sutton, author of Heart Healthy Pizza. Now what we're going to do today is in this little segment we're going to cook some kale the way I like to do it. First of all, I'm using a non-stick wok. Okay, eliminates the need for oil, provides a lot of volume and a wonderful foundation, if you will, in terms of its structure for properly cooking something like kale rather than a flat metal pan that people will use. And more importantly too is that you can cover the wok, and that reduces the amount of energy you use to cook the kale, and it makes it cook faster because you're trapping the heat. So if you're cooking kale, something that's deep dish, if you will, and that has a cover. Okay, cover. Now at the bottom of the wok right now we have chunks of kale stem. I don't like to throw this away. I consider it good nutrition. And yes, you can strip off the leaves from the kale and eliminate the stems, but this particular kale was midlife kale, stems the size of roughly pencils, so that I know it'll cook nicely and have a nice tender texture to it and provide more nutrition and more fiber. So here's the kale, the stems of the kale, if you will, in the bottom of the wok. Now we're going to add some water, probably around a cup. And the trick is to add more water if you need it, because you can always drain it. Kale's very forgiving. It's not going to soak it up and get soggier because you use too much water. And now, rather than chopping up garlic, which is normally what I would have on the bottom of something like this, I'm going to use some garlic powder. And oftentimes I would use chili pepper flakes, but I don't want to do that right now because of the particular recipe that I have in mind for this. This is going to be on a pizza. And now I'm going to turn my heat on, appropriate for a stir fry, around medium-high, and it'll take a few minutes to heat up. And while it does that, I'm going to cover this and go and rinse my kale. One of the advantages to this approach is I don't need to excessively worry about the stems, because I know the water on the bottom will cook the stems first before it cooks the tender leaves of the kale. So we'll put the leaves here that have been rinsed in my trusty salad spinner. And I know from experience that in this wok, a wok full of kale, or collards, if you will, or mustard greens, will probably be good for me for 2 to 4 meals, depending upon how I use it. So keep in mind, I've got a medium-high heat on the bottom. I've got water and kale stems on the bottom with garlic, and then we're going to press this in a little bit, and importantly, we're going to put a top on, such that it is, and that'll do for right now. It's not precise, but it'll do. So we're thinking about this from a standpoint of thermodynamics. The water is going to steam and cook and boil the kale stems first, which are a bit tougher, and then that's going to infuse up through the other tenderer parts, the kale leaves. okay, which we're going to eventually mix together with everything else. Okay. So, the takeaway here is use a wide, large cooking utensil, a wok or a large stir pan, not some little metal thing, and have a good top to trap the steam, to decrease the amount of energy you need and decrease the amount of time it takes to cook your kale. I suspect this is going to take about 15 minutes total, so there'll be some edits on this. This is just a first try at the taping. Okay, we're 7 minutes into the cooking. We're going to double check. Now, I can hear the water bubbling underneath. Let me turn the water off over here. Got it doing something else. You can hear the water boiling, and you can start to see a little bit of signs of the kale wilting at the top, which is good. That means the heat is coming up from the boiling water, which is cooking the stems, and starting to permeate through the top of the kale. Now, at this point, it's been probably about 4 minutes. Doesn't take long for this to happen. And so you need to watch your heat. Probably in a couple minutes, I'll turn the heat down a little bit so that I bring it down to more of a simmer than a boil. Oh, moi kale. Okay, you can't hear it, but I can hear the water boiling, and I can see that the kale is starting to wilt at the top. And I'm going to press it down a little bit using a wooden utensil in a non-stick wok as opposed to a metal fork utensil and a metal dish, as I've seen some people do. It makes no sense to me at all. So, and I'm going to turn the heat down just a little bit to a medium, and I'm going to sprinkle on some balsamic vinegar. If I weren't cutting down drastically on salt because of the injury I had recently, I would add a little bit of tamari or soy sauce at this point. So I just sprinkled on some balsamic vinegar. Top goes back on, traps the heat. Water is simmering with the stems at the bottom, and the kale leaves chopped at the top are starting to wilt. And I've just infused them with some wonderful balsamic vinegar.